Okay, so I've got my scan of my pen drawing. Like I had before, I started out with this duplicate of the original drawing. I made a new layer with the original, and I went in to image and then adjustments and then down to levels and moved the arrows to get the darkest darks and the lightest lights. So like I said before, when I move the black arrow to the right, it takes the darkest grays and transforms them to black. If I move the white arrow to the left, it takes the lightest grays and makes them white. And then the gray arrow in the middle will shift any medium grays either to white or black, just depending on which direction you move it in. So my goal with this is to get a pretty stark black and white image. That way when I take it into Illustrator and do live trace, I'll get the purest transformation to vector that I could possibly get, hopefully. So I'm going to adjust as much as I can in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use select and then color range. And from here I'm going to take the eyedropper tool and select the darkest area thus far in my drawing. And so when I do that, it selects the all the black in the drawing. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another new layer. This one's completely blank. And I'm going to take the paint bucket tool and fill in those dark areas. So now when I deselect it, I get a really dark image, at least with the lines. What I can also do before I deselect, I can take the brush tool with black as my fill color, and I can just go into certain areas that maybe aren't quite as dark as I want them to be. It's basically just adding black as it's needed. I've already edited out little spots and things, but if I needed to, I could go in with either the eraser tool or the brush tool with the fill in white and take out any spots or areas of dust that might have been on the scanner. So this is a pretty good rendering, I think. So I've already saved it as a Photoshop document, so I can go back and edit it if I need to. But I'm going to go and save it as a TIFF. And you can save it as a TIFF or a JPEG. Now I'm going to go to my Illustrator document. So I've already got it set up with the one artboard that I'm going to be working in. This one's 10 inches by 16 inches with a 1/8 of an inch bleed. So to get the image in here, I'm going to go to File and then Place. And then I'm going to find my image. And place it in here. So as soon as I place it and I get the selection box around my image, I get some options here at the top. The one we're going to be working with today is Live Trace. And if you just click the button with your drawing as it is, it's going to use the default settings to transform your drawing into a vector image. But what I like to do is actually go and edit the options on my own just to get the drawing the way I want it. I'm just going to zoom in so you guys can see what's happening. So I go up to Object, go down to Live Trace, and then to Tracing Options. and I get this new window that comes up. The first thing I'm going to do is press preview. This will show me what my drawing will look like once it's converted to vector. And as soon as I do that, oops, the image will automatically smooth out. With the mode I have right now, it's black and white, so it's taking any really dark grays and putting it to black, any light grays putting it to white. There are options to do this with a color or a grayscale image. If I did grayscale, it'll take a little bit longer. But the default setting will have a maximum of 6 colors. So it's going to create 6 variants of gray. And I don't know how well you can see it, but instead of having nice, clean, sharp black lines, you've got a black line here and then kind of a darker gray around it and a lighter gray and a lighter gray. So it's not a nice, solid line. If you want to go in and color things, like have your lines vary a little bit, you could do the grayscale, but for our purposes, I would suggest sticking with the black and white. And then I also select Ignore White here at the bottom. And this is kind of a personal preference thing. When you say Ignore White, it's going to get rid of any white area within your drawing. So all you're going to be left with are the black lines. Some people might want to keep the whites because they could actually take the direct selection tool and select areas within the drawing and color the image that way. I just like to kind of start with a blank slate, so I just keep the black lines. Then in terms of options for editing the way the image is rendered, you've got these 3 options here at the bottom: path fitting, minimum area, and corner angle. Each one does something a little bit different. The path fitting, it seems to change the distance or the number of points on a segment. So if I increase the path fitting, it tends to straighten out any curves. The corner angle can adjust the way the curves are in your drawing. So if you want a sharper angle or a smoother angle, you might make adjustments to this. So as you can see, it really took out a lot of the detail and rounded out the corners. Put that back down. And then the minimum area, I believe this takes out, it'll kind of select areas in your line drawing and decide to edit it out. So all 3 of these are options that you just kind of have to play with and decide which one gives you the rendering that you prefer. The main goal here is to take your image and kind of smooth it out. A lot of times if you bring in an image straight from a scan, it's going to be pixelated. So if you have your options really low, you're going to keep that pixelated look. So just try out all 3 of these options, see which one gives you the smooth line quality without losing too much of the integrity of your drawing. So I press trace, and I have the vector version of my image, but if I try to click on it, all it's going to do is take me inside the group of the image. I can't actually edit anything yet. So what I need to do is make sure my drawing is selected, and you will see this button here at the top, expand. Once I press expand, everything gets converted to an editable vector object, and you can tell because it has all these points on the outline of the drawing. So from here I could take the white arrow tool or the direct selection tool and actually pull out certain points and adjust them. I could take the pen tool and roll over a point and delete it, or I could add points and use the anchor conversion tool to stretch areas out. So it makes it pretty easy to go back and edit my image. Are there any questions about live trace and how you convert your scan to a vector? Okay. So from here, I can either make a new layer and I can put it underneath this drawing, and I could take the blob tool, make a color, actually let me lock that layer. Why is it in black and white? There we go. And I could actually color underneath the drawing just like I demonstrated last week. And take the eraser and edit that way. So if you want kind of a more handmade look, you might want to color your image in this fashion. The other option is to use live paint. So for that, I'm going to go to Object and then go down to Live Paint. And I have to have my current drawing selected. I go over to Make, and hold on. There we go. So I have my drawing selected. You should be able to go to Object and go to Live Paint and convert it that way. I'm going to try doing the Live Paint bucket. So when I have that and I roll over my image, the image turns, gets a red outline on it, and the paint bucket says next to it, click to make a live paint group. When I click within it, it'll automatically take the fill color I already have selected and fill in an area within my object. So if I want to change the color, I just go put in a new fill color, and click, and it fills in that area with the color. So now that I've already made this a live paint group, I can go into any enclosed area, including the lines themselves, and fill them with a color. Now you'll notice that certain areas, I mentioned this before, if you have certain areas that aren't completely enclosed, it's not going to want to fill those areas. So the dog's head, for example, has these spots where the lines don't meet. And so when I go and try to fill that area, it says, well, sorry, you can't do it because it's not an enclosed area. But if I go over to the ear, it is an enclosed area and it lets me fill it in. So if I want to be able to fill in these areas and actually edit these lines, I should be able to use, let's see, if I can use the blob tool. connect some of these lines.
How did you get to that box where you can edit the fidelity?
If you double click, so right now I'm just on the base layer. Anytime you have an object, you should be able to double click inside of it and you go to the group. And a group is just a collection of vector objects. So when I did live trace, it automatically took all the individual lines and put it into one group. When I double click inside it, I can get deeper and deeper inside the group. And so that'll let me easily edit individual parts. So I think I just need maybe a couple more lines and this will be completely enclosed. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my live paint tool. Actually, I'm going to click the color I need first. And now when I roll over the area, since it's completely enclosed, I get the red outline and it says, okay, it's cool now, you can actually put color inside of it. So I can go in and I can fill in entire areas just like this. And like I mentioned, I can change some of the lines. So let's say I want maybe a darker brown instead of the black for the lines. I could go in with the live paint tool and select specific lines to change. Another option, if you really want to quickly change the color of anything, you can go up to select, go down to same, and you can choose an object with the same fill color, same stroke, whatever. But if I do same fill color, let's see if I choose black, select same fill color, so it's going to select anything that's black, then I could go in and change the color of anything that's black within my drawing. I don't think it'll let me do it right now because it's all a live paint image. Now, let's say I have all this filled in the way I want it to, but live trace isn't letting me edit individual stuff like I want it to. Pretty much as long as it's a live paint group, it's only going to let you fill in areas with color, like a coloring book, and that's pretty much it. So what I can do from there, I could select the live paint group again and click expand, just like we did when we converted the live trace into an editable vector object. And so now when I double click inside the group, I get actual blocks of color that I can go in, move around, delete if I want to. And actually now I should be able to select these lines. Select same fill color, yeah. And now I can change all of the black lines to brown. So sometimes it's a little bit of back and forth. You can always select this, go back to live paint and make a live paint group again, and then expand it again and get the individual parts. You just kind of have to see what you need to do when and all of that kind of stuff. Are there questions about live paint? It's kind of a quick and dirty explanation. Okay. Now, especially since you're starting to color everything, you really need to know what kind of colors you're going to be working with. You get this beautiful array of colors from Adobe automatically. The problem with just using these, though, is it'll end up looking like you have a box of Crayolas and just colored it in. So instead of doing that, especially if I already have some colors in mind, what I'll do is I'll actually select some of the colors. You can select them individually, or what I do if I know I'm going to delete a bunch of them, I'll select the first one I want to get rid of, hold down Shift, and hold the last one I want to get rid of. Go to the trash can icon down here and delete all of them except for black and white. So I've got a clean slate to work with. What I'll typically do is I'll put together some swatches, but just on my my artboard to kind of see what colors go well together. So let's say I already know I want to use some red. I want to choose maybe some other colors go along with it. Maybe kind of like a greenish yellow. Another green, and kind of like a magenta purple. So I'll take these colors and kind of arrange them in a way so I can see how all 4 or 5 or however many colors I have work together. And then if that's the palette I want to go with, what I can do is select the box, and I'll get the fill box here in the lower left corner, and I can click and drag it over to my swatches. It automatically makes a swatch. Or I can select the box with the color, go to make a new swatch, and I could name it. So this one I can call green, and it automatically puts it in there for me. Usually I don't really like to mess with windows and stuff, so I'll just click and drag it over. So that's one way. I've already got a palette there. If I wanted to, I could even select all of these and make a new color group. So I've got the 4 selected. There's this icon down here that looks like a folder with a plus sign next to it. When I click on that, I get a color group. I can name it, and it takes those swatches and puts them in a folder for me. So they're right there where I need them. Another option, let's say I've already got one color that I really want to work with, but I don't know what other colors to put with it. I can use some suggestions from Adobe. There's this option under the color palette called Color Guide. If I click on that, it gives me this drop-down menu at the top, and it'll automatically generate scientifically paired colors for the original color selected. So it'll choose complementary colors, split complementary. If I want 3 colors that are all equidistant from one another on the color wheel, etc. So let's say I like this Compound 2 version. If I click that, it'll take the red I originally have, give me the other colors that are suggested to go along with it. It also gives me tints and shades so I can see what the colors would look like if they had black added or white added. And then I can save these colors as swatches so I can easily access them. So from the menu here, I could go to Save Colors as Swatches, and then those get put into a color group for me to easily have access to. The last thing I'll talk about is something called global color. So in terms of working with color and prints, you've got CMYK. Who knows what CMYK stands for?
Cyan, magenta, yellow.
All right. Cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. Those are the 4 colors that most printers will use. They layer those colors in different ratios to produce the colors you see on the paper. There's also other printers, usually offset printing, sometimes letterpress, or other methods where you can use specific colors, colors straight from the tube or the can of paint, and generate a very vivid color. Those are usually, I guess the standard for graphics is Pantone. So you can always use the color book that's given to you on Adobe software. So if you go to Open Swatch Library and go down to color books, you can choose a Pantone color book, let's say solid uncoated, and it'll give you all the colors that Pantone offers in a standard tube color. So you could use these if you want to kind of have an array of colors to choose from. I will caution you that if you don't have a Pantone swatch book to look at, what you look at on the screen is not going to look like, it's not going to print out the same. So you really have to have the swatch book to compare what the colors are actually going to look like. Usually, since our printers are trying to convert a regular paint tube color to CMYK, the colors will be a bit more dull on our printers. But let's say you were making a cool poster to be printed by screen printing, and they have Pantone colors. You would go ahead and use the Pantones here. So when you go take it to the printer, they can automatically separate the colors out and know what colors to put where. Another thing you can do, let's say you don't really want to fool with Pantones, but you want the same flexibility of using your colors as if it was just from a tube of paint. If you double click on a swatch and click this button that says Global, it's going to give you a swatch here with a little white triangle in the lower right-hand corner. Now if I go up to the color palette, instead of having the standard CMYK sliders, I get the variant of the color going from its most potent form to white. So from here, let's say I want to take this block of red and I want it to have 50% white in it. All I have to do now that it's a global color is take the slider down to 50% and it automatically gives me a tint of that color. So this works really well. Let's say I have all 4 of these colors here. I'm going to make all of them global colors. And for my poster, I really want it to look like it's been offset or screen printed. So I'm going to take these colors and kind of make a tint palette for myself. And put in these different hues at different percentages of tints. So now as I'm working, let's say I take the doggy here, let's say he starts out as this purple color. I could take the blob tool and start to do some highlighting with a color that's in the same hue range as the original color. So it kind of helps the transition between the two colors be a little bit more subtle and not as forced, because the colors are the same. I'm basically just adding white to them. Then if you want to look at shades, you can also go back to the color guide and it'll give you areas of darkness, so you can adjust that. The other option there is you could go back to the CMYK version of your color and adjust the level of black. There's also a setting called Hue, Saturation, and Brightness. So here you could take, you could adjust the saturation so that'll add gray to it and dull out the color. Or you could adjust the brightness, which of course adds black. So for this project especially, I would encourage you to pick a color palette. You've probably done a fair amount of research and found that the kind of colors that might be used in the posters for the type of genre that you're looking at in terms of music. If you start with, let's say, 4 to 6 colors and then look at tints and shades of those, you can make a more cohesive image, but still make it really interesting by the colors you pair together. A lot of the posters we looked at in the video, they might have had a super bright pink paired with a dull green. So there might be colors that initially just don't really work together, but when you think of them in terms of the type of music the band plays or the type of audience they're trying to reach, it'll start to make sense. So, yeah, are there any questions about developing color palettes?